Tonight, as you drift beneath your blanket, let me take you on a quiet journey. Back, far back, to the olive oil-slicked stones and sun-baked hills of ancient Greece, a place of great minds, golden temples, and tunics that flapped in the wind like flags of freedom or folly, depending on the day. But behind marble statues and philosophical debates lies another Greece, quieter and harder, a world where each day began not with an alarm, but with the sun creeping over clay rooftops, gently turning homes into ovens, where windows had no glass, only shutters, and where a soft breeze was a rare and holy thing, gifted only by generous gods. In this world, you rise early not by choice, but because the heat makes sleep impossible, and your bed is nothing more than a straw-filled mat, where lice are your midnight companions, and your cloak is both pillow and cover. There is no running water. Instead, you begin your day by walking to the village fountain or well, clay jars balanced on sore shoulders, hoping your foot doesn't slip and send a week's labor crashing to shards on the dusty earth. Your body is sticky with sleep and sweat, and to clean yourself, you don't lather up with soap because there is none. Instead, you rub olive oil into your skin and scrape it away with a curved blade, not for luxury, not for beauty, but simply to remove a layer of dirt and the scent of yesterday's toil. There is no privacy here. You live with your family, all together in one room, where the goat might have a corner and silence is something you imagine but never truly hear. Breakfast, when it comes, is humble. A piece of barley bread called maza, dry and dense, sometimes dunked in watered wine, not for taste, but because the water alone is untrustworthy. If you're lucky, maybe a fig, maybe a slice of goat cheese, but more likely the bread is hard and stubborn, and your jaw is already tired before your chores even begin. If you're a woman, you wait to eat until the men have finished, and then you clean up, spin wool, grind grain, fetch more water, bake more bread. You don't attend the plays, or the debates, or the gymnasium. Your world is the home, the loom, the hearth, and the faint sound of public life drifting through latticework windows. If you're a man, your day may take you to the marketplace, to the docks, to the fields, or perhaps to the training grounds. Because here, every male citizen is a soldier, trained to fight whether he wishes to or not, whether he loves poetry or battle. In Sparta, boys are taken from their mothers at 7, forged into warriors through hunger, cold, and fear. In Athens, training is less brutal, but still a duty, and every man must serve, vote, argue, and bleed for the city that calls him citizen. You wear a simple robe, pinned at the shoulders, and sandals if you're fortunate. There are no socks, no underwear, just linen and hope. On windy days, your dignity may flutter with the breeze, and on hot days, the sun roasts your shoulders and cheeks, and your robe sticks in uncomfortable ways. You walk through streets that are also sewers that double as news feeds and gathering spots, dodging goats, dung, and the chatter of neighbors. Your meals are quick, your work is endless, and if you are poor, which most are, your tunic may not see a washing for weeks. Clothes are beaten against rocks when cleaned, and you thank the gods if your sandals last another month. You might visit the agora to hear the latest news, or stand in the assembly to vote on a new law, because here, democracy means showing up. But only if you're a man, Athenian-born, over 18, with both parents from the city. Everyone else, women, slaves, foreigners, has no voice. They pay taxes, raise children, build homes, dig mines, but the democracy that shaped the future is not for them. It's for the few. And if someone gets too popular, too loud, too powerful, the people gather and vote to send them away for 10 years. No trial, no appeal, just a name scratched into pottery and a quiet exile. In your free time, if such a thing exists, you might go to a symposium, drink wine that's always diluted, and talk about love, war, the stars, or the nature of the soul. And yet, as the sun sets and the sky burns orange behind the Acropolis, your day is far from done. If you are a woman, you're tending the fire, checking the bread, settling the children. If you are a man, you are still talking politics or cleaning weapons. And if you are a slave, your work never ends. You're property. You might be born into slavery, or captured in war, or stolen from a foreign land. You cook, clean, carry, teach, mine, and serve, and no one asks how you feel. You belong to someone, and your name may not even be remembered. Some slaves teach children. Some manage entire households. Some die slowly in silver mines, coughing in the dark. If you're lucky, you might earn freedom. But even then, you will never be a citizen. Never vote. Never own land. Never truly belong. And so, as night returns and the stones cool beneath your tired feet, you lie again on your straw mat, wrapped in your cloak, listening to the hum of insects and the distant cries of the city settling into silence. There are no lights, only stars, brilliant and cold above you. No sounds, save for the occasional donkey bray or the whisper of wind through wooden shutters. Tomorrow will be the same, a slow dance of heat and duty, a philosophy and survival. But for now, here in the hush of ancient Greece, as I stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs, still clutching the dusty photo album with trembling hands, I could hear the faintest sound, something like a breath, not mine, coming from upstairs. The silence around it made the whisper louder, more deliberate. My mind raced to make sense of it, to rationalize it away as old pipes or shifting floorboards. But in my gut, I knew it wasn't the house settling. It was something else, someone else. And I wasn't alone. The air was thick now, not just with the scent of mildew and time, but with the unshakable sense of being watched. Slowly, I backed away from the stairs, my heartbeat loud in my ears, thudding like a warning drum from some distant shore. But the album in my hands had weight, not just physical but emotional, and I couldn't let it go. I had flipped through only a few pages, yet it already began to rewrite everything I thought I knew about this place and about my family. There was a photo on the last page I'd seen, one that didn't make sense. A picture of me as a child, but not here, not in this house. It looked like I was standing in a dark hallway, flanked by two figures in black veils, their faces blurred as though the camera itself had recoiled from capturing them clearly. I had no memory of this moment, and something deep inside told me I never should have. But the photo was real. It had been taken, which meant someone or something had wanted it remembered. I knew I should leave, walk out of the house and never come back. But my feet moved on their own, carrying me into the next room, the old embalming room, now covered with plastic sheets and forgotten tools. The chill in the air deepened there, pressing against my skin like unseen hands. That's when I saw the mirror, tall, cracked at the edges, and covered in grime. I hadn't remembered it being there before, but when I looked into it, my reflection didn't match my movements. It blinked when I didn't. It turned its head slightly, and I stood still. I felt sick. My fingers went numb. And then, from behind the mirror, something knocked. Once, twice. Then a dragging sound, slow and deliberate, as though something was being pulled across the floor. I backed away, but the door behind me slammed shut. The lights flickered, and for a split second, I could see shadows darting along the walls, thin, impossibly tall figures that didn't walk so much as glide, like smoke trapped in human form. I stumbled back into the center of the room, and that's when I saw it, carved into the floor beneath the dust, barely visible unless the light caught it just right. A symbol, an old one. I recognized it not from any book or website, but from a dream I had when I was a child. A recurring nightmare of standing in a room filled with cold breath and empty eyes, while something moved beneath the floorboards, whispering my name over and over in a voice that wasn't quite human. Now the whisper was real, louder, echoing through the house in that same terrible cadence, my name dragging across the walls like claws. I screamed, but no sound came out. The house was remembering, and it wanted me to remember too. I stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs, still clutching the dusty photo album with trembling hands. I could hear the faintest sound, something like a breath, not mine, coming from upstairs. The silence around it made the whisper louder, more deliberate. My mind raced to make sense of it, to rationalize it away as old pipes or shifting floorboards. But in my gut, I knew it wasn't the house settling. It was something else, someone else. And I wasn't alone. The air was thick now, not just with the scent of mildew and time, but with the unshakable sense of being watched. Slowly, I backed away from the stairs, my heartbeat loud in my ears, thudding like a warning drum from some distant shore. But the album in my hands had weight, not just physical but emotional, and I couldn't let it go. I had flipped through only a few pages, yet it already began to rewrite everything I thought I knew about this place and about my family. There was a photo on the last page I'd seen, one that didn't make sense. A picture of me as a child, but not here, not in this house. It looked like I was standing in a dark hallway, flanked by two figures in black veils, their faces blurred as though the camera itself had recoiled from capturing them clearly. I had no memory of this moment, and something deep inside told me I never should have. But the photo was real. It had been taken, which meant someone or something had wanted it remembered. I knew I should leave, walk out of the house, and never come back. But my feet moved on their own, carrying me into the next room, the old embalming room, now covered with plastic sheets and forgotten tools. The chill in the air deepened there, pressing against my skin like unseen hands. That's when I saw the mirror, tall, cracked at the edges, and covered in grime. I hadn't remembered it being there before, but when I looked into it, my reflection didn't match my movements. It blinked when I didn't. It turned its head slightly, and I stood still. I felt sick. My fingers went numb. And then, from behind the mirror, something knocked. Once, twice, then a dragging sound, slow and deliberate, as though something was being pulled across the floor. I backed away, but the door behind me slammed shut. The lights flickered, and for a split second, I could see shadows darting along the walls, thin, impossibly tall figures that didn't walk so much as glide, like smoke trapped in human form. I stumbled back into the center of the room, and that's when I saw it, carved into the floor beneath the dust, barely visible unless the light caught it just right. A symbol, an old one. I recognized it not from any book or website, but from a dream I had when I was a child. A recurring nightmare of standing in a room filled with cold breath and empty eyes, while something moved beneath the floorboards, whispering my name over and over in a voice that wasn't quite human. Now the whisper was real, louder, echoing through the house in that same terrible cadence, my name dragging across the walls like claws. I screamed, but no sound came out. The house was remembering, and it wanted me to remember too. The whispering grew louder, wrapping around me like a suffocating fog, each syllable slicing through the heavy silence with a razor's edge. My breath caught in my throat, and the cold in the embalming room became unbearable, seeping into my bones as if the very air was frozen in time. I dropped the photo album to the floor, its pages splayed open, revealing more faces, some familiar, others grotesquely distorted, as if the photographs themselves had been corrupted by something malevolent. The symbol on the floor seemed to pulse faintly, almost alive, glowing with a dull, sickly light that made my skin crawl. I wanted to flee, to smash through the door and escape into the night, but the house held me in place, like a spider's web spun tight around a trapped insect. Then, from the shadows, I saw movement, a figure emerging slowly from the darkness, its shape indistinct but undeniably human. It didn't walk. It hovered, gliding just above the floor, the edges of its form flickering like static on an old television screen. Its eyes, hollow and black as voids, locked onto mine, and I felt a surge of memories crash into me. Forgotten faces, whispered promises, and warnings I had buried deep in my mind. The figure raised a hand, pointing directly at me, and I understood then that I wasn't just a visitor or a curious descendant. I was the key, the last link in a chain of events that had cursed this house for generations. It opened its mouth, and the whisper became a scream inside my head, an ancient name I had heard in dreams, a name that was not mine, but one I was destined to bear. Panic overwhelmed me, and I stumbled backward, tripping over the edge of the carpet and hitting the cold floor hard. When I looked up, the figure was gone, but the room had changed. The plastic sheets were torn, hanging like ghosts around me, and the tools on the tables were covered in dried blood. My eyes darted around, searching for an explanation, but none came. Instead, I noticed a door I hadn't seen before, a small, narrow door carved into the wall beneath the staircase. It was old, the wood cracked and splintered, but somehow it beckoned me. I felt drawn to it, a mix of fear and compulsion that I couldn't resist. As I approached, the whispering faded to a low hum, like a distant lullaby that promised secrets I wasn't ready to hear. I hesitated, then reached out, fingers trembling, and turned the rusted knob. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling downward into darkness. Without thinking, I stepped inside, the air growing colder with every step. The walls closed in, and the faint light from above disappeared until I was swallowed by complete blackness. Then, at the bottom of the stairs, I found myself in a small chamber, bare except for a wooden box resting in the center. The box was old, carved with the same symbol from the embalming room, and as I lifted its lid, a rush of cold air spilled out, carrying with it the scent of decay and forgotten time. Inside lay letters, brittle and yellowed, tied with a black ribbon and a small, rusted key. I unfolded the first letter, written in shaky, faded ink. It was a confession, a desperate plea from a woman who had lived here long ago. A woman who spoke of a darkness that had taken hold of her family, of sacrifices made to keep a terrible secret buried beneath the house. The key, she wrote, was the only thing that could unlock the truth, but also the curse itself. My hands shook as I realized that the key was meant for the door I had just come through, but there was another door down here, one hidden in the stone wall, almost invisible beneath the shadows. With the key in hand, I reached out and found the latch, turning it slowly. The door swung open to reveal a narrow passage, leading even deeper beneath the house, into a place no one had seen for over a century. And as I stepped forward, I understood that this was no longer just about the house or my family. It was about the darkness itself, ancient and hungry, waiting for me to unlock its prison and finally set it free. I descended into the pitch-black passage. The air grew heavier, almost viscous, pressing against my lungs like an unseen force determined to keep me from moving forward. Every step echoed softly against the damp stone walls, and I could feel the weight of centuries pressing down on me, as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting. The faint glow from the chamber above faded quickly, and soon I was swallowed by darkness, so complete it felt like another world, an ancient tomb sealed away from time. My fingers brushed the cold, rough surface of the wall for guidance as I moved cautiously, heart hammering against my ribs in frantic rhythm. Suddenly, a low sound vibrated through the corridor, a slow, guttural hum that grew louder with each step, pulsing through the very stones beneath my feet. It was a sound that spoke of age and sorrow, of anger and hunger, something not meant for living ears. I stopped, breath hitching, as a flicker of pale light appeared ahead, casting long, twisted shadows that danced along the walls. The passage opened into a cavernous room, vast and cavern-like, with a ceiling lost in darkness, supported by ancient pillars carved with symbols I couldn't decipher but felt deeply unsettling. In the center lay a shallow pit filled with dry bones, and above it hovered an orb of smoky light that shifted and writhed like a living thing. The orb pulsed, sending waves of cold through me, and I realized it was the source of the whispers, the ancient voice calling to me from beyond the veil. Around the pit, etched into the stone floor, were runes identical to the symbol on the box and door, runes that seemed to glow faintly as I approached. My skin prickled with dread as I recognized them from the letters, words of binding, meant to trap whatever lay beneath this place. Then the orb split, releasing tendrils of shadow that reached out like fingers toward me, cold and hungry. I stumbled back, dropping the letters and key, but the shadows recoiled just enough to let me breathe. In that moment, a voice echoed in my mind, clearer now, but no less terrifying. It spoke of a betrayal long ago, of a pact made in blood, and of a darkness sealed here to protect the living world. The voice told me that my family had been both the guardians and the jailers, cursed to keep this evil bound, But with every generation, the chains weakened, and the darkness sought freedom through the bloodline. I understood then that I was not only a descendant, but a key, chosen to either renew the bindings or break them forever. As fear warred with an inexplicable resolve inside me, I realized the box's contents held more than just letters and keys. They were a legacy, a burden, and a warning. I gathered the papers and turned to leave, but the passage behind me was collapsing, stones crashing down as if the house itself was punishing me for awakening its secrets. I sprinted forward, heart pounding, dodging falling debris until I burst through a hidden exit that led to the overgrown backyard, gasping for fresh air. The night was still, but I knew nothing would ever be the same again. I had unearthed the past, and now the darkness was awake, watching, waiting for its chance to reclaim what was once its own. From that moment on, the house no longer felt like a home, but a cage, and I was trapped inside a story much older and far more terrifying than I could have ever imagined. In the days that followed, the house seemed to pulse with a life of its own, shadows stretching and twitching just beyond the corner of my vision, whispers seeping through the walls like a living fog. Sleep became a stranger, replaced by restless nights filled with visions of ancient rituals and blood-soaked ceremonies where my ancestors stood over the very pit I had discovered, chanting words that bounded darkness so terrible it defied comprehension. The letters I had found became my only link to understanding, their cryptic warnings and instructions etched into my mind like a curse. I delved deeper into the history, searching through dusty archives and forgotten journals left by my forebears, uncovering a lineage steeped in secrecy and sacrifice. Each page revealed more about the pact, the original sin that had doomed my family to a lifetime of vigilance and despair. The darkness beneath the house was not merely an evil entity, but a fractured spirit born from betrayal and murder, a soul twisted by anguish and rage, yearning for release. The more I learned, the heavier the burden grew, and I felt the weight of my ancestors' failures pressing down on me. But it wasn't just history. The darkness had begun to reach out in more tangible ways. Objects moved when I wasn't looking, cold drafts swept through rooms that should have been sealed, and the orb's faint glow appeared in reflections, a reminder that the unseen was never far. One night, as the clock struck midnight, I was drawn back to the backyard where I had fled, compelled by a force I could neither resist nor explain. There, beneath the gnarled branches of an ancient tree, I uncovered a second hidden entrance, a narrow staircase carved into the earth, spiraling downward into unknown depths. The air grew colder with each step, and the oppressive silence was broken only by my own breathing and the distant drip of water echoing through the tunnels. At the bottom, I found a chamber unlike the one above. This was a sanctuary, a place where my ancestors had left offerings and inscribed prayers meant to strengthen the bonds. Here, the runes glowed brighter, and the orb hung suspended, its light flickering with a life of its own. As I approached, a surge of energy coursed through me, and the voice returned, this time not as a whisper, but a commanding presence within my mind, offering a terrible choice. Renew the ancient bindings and continue the cycle of sacrifice, or break the chains and unleash the darkness upon the world. Torn between duty and fear, I realized the true test was not the strength of the curse, but the strength of my will. I was no longer just a guardian of secrets, but a pivotal force in a cosmic struggle between light and shadow, past and future. And as dawn broke, casting weak light over the ruins of my ancestors' legacy, I knew that whatever path I chose would not only define my fate, but the fate of all who walked in the fragile balance of this haunted inheritance. The weight of the choice pressed on me relentlessly, a gnawing ache beneath my ribs that no amount of reasoning or denial could quell. I stood in the shadowed chamber, the orb's flickering light casting eerie patterns on the walls, and I realized that my ancestors' warnings were more than mere superstition. They were a testament to the fragile boundary between worlds, a boundary I was now charged with maintaining or destroying. As I hesitated, the darkness stirred with impatience, a silent growl vibrating through the stone floor beneath my feet, reminding me that time was not on my side. Memories flashed unbidden, faces of those who had succumbed before me, their lives claimed by the very curse I was meant to contain. But also, the resilience embedded deep within my bloodline, a defiance that refused to surrender to despair. Determined to understand the full scope of the power I was dealing with, I began to explore the labyrinthine tunnels beyond the chamber, uncovering hidden alcoves filled with relics, ancient talismans, weathered scrolls, and jars containing strange substances that shimmered with an unnatural light. Each artifact seemed to hold a piece of the puzzle, whispering secrets of rituals designed to bind or banish the darkness, some lost to time, others preserved in meticulous detail. Through these discoveries, I learned that the darkness was not just a singular entity, but a manifestation of collective anguish, a convergence of restless spirits and broken promises, feeding on fear and pain. The key to breaking the cycle lay not in brute force or blind obedience, but in confronting the truth behind the curse, acknowledging the sins of the past, and seeking redemption through understanding and sacrifice. Armed with this knowledge, I crafted a plan to perform a ritual that could sever the link between my family and the malevolent force. But it required more than just my will. It demanded a sacrifice of love, a relinquishing of something precious, a vow to protect the living at the cost of personal loss. As I prepared the sacred space and gathered the necessary elements, the house groaned and shifted as if sensing the impending upheaval. The air thickened, charged with anticipation and dread, and shadows lengthened, coalescing into shapes that both warned and pleaded. I called upon every ounce of courage, reciting the ancient incantations, feeling the energy ripple through the chamber like waves crashing against a storm-tossed shore. The orb pulsed violently, casting blinding light that momentarily erased the darkness, revealing fleeting glimpses of faces, some familiar, some foreign, caught between worlds, yearning for release. The final moment approached, and with it, the unbearable choice to give up the very essence of what anchored me to this world, knowing that only then could peace be restored, but at a cost that would forever mark my soul. And as the ritual reached its crescendo, the boundary between past and present, light and shadow, life and death blurred, leaving me suspended in a liminal space where destiny awaited, silent yet inevitable. The ritual's final words echoed in the chamber. A silence heavier than any before enveloped the space, as if the very air held its breath in anticipation. The orb's pulsation slowed, then steadied, transforming from a frantic heartbeat to a calm, steady glow that bathed the room in a gentle light. Yet, within me, a tempest raged, an ache that was both physical and spiritual, the cost of the sacrifice settling deep into my bones. I realized then that what I had relinquished was not merely a token or a token gesture, but a fragment of my own essence, something irreplaceable that had tethered me to my past and my lineage. The shadows, once restless and clawing at the edges of reality, began to dissipate, retreating like a receding tide, but not without leaving traces. Whispers of sorrow, lingering regrets, and faint, ethereal fingerprints that marked the walls like ghostly graffiti. Despite the immediate relief, I understood that the darkness was not entirely vanquished. It had been restrained, held at bay by the fragile barrier of my vow and the ritual's power, but it would always linger at the periphery, waiting for a moment of weakness or a fracture in the bond to surge forth once more. Emerging from the chamber, the house felt transformed, no longer an oppressive prison, but a place of cautious hope, a living testament to resilience and redemption. Yet, as I moved through the halls, I sensed that the story was far from over. The legacy of my ancestors, the intertwined fates of those who came before and those who would follow, demanded vigilance and courage. Outside, the dawn broke, painting the sky with hues of amber and rose, a stark contrast to the darkness I had just faced. I stepped into the light, aware that while the immediate threat had been quelled, My journey had only begun. The world beyond the house held its own mysteries and dangers, many connected to the same ancient forces that haunted my bloodline. There were others, scattered across distant lands and forgotten histories, who shared the burden of guarding against shadows that sought to consume. My path would take me far from home, into the heart of places where myths and reality blurred, where allies and enemies hid behind veils of illusion and truth. I would need to learn to grow stronger and to reconcile the duality within me, the ordinary and the extraordinary, the light and the dark. For in this balance lay the key not just to my survival, but to breaking the cycle that had ensnared so many before me. And so, with a heart heavy yet resolute, I stepped forward into the unknown, carrying with me the hope of redemption, the weight of sacrifice, and the unyielding will to protect the fragile boundary between worlds, knowing that every step would be a battle, every breath a testament to the enduring power of light against shadow. As I ventured beyond the threshold of my ancestral home, the weight of what had transpired pressed upon me with every step, yet there was a newfound clarity beneath the burden, a sense that the path ahead, though shrouded in uncertainty, was mine to walk with purpose. The world outside was vast and indifferent, teeming with both danger and possibility, a place where ancient forces still whispered beneath the veneer of the mundane and where the fragile boundary between realms remained perilously thin. I soon discovered that the shadows I had battled were but fragments of a greater darkness, an ancient malevolence woven into the fabric of reality itself, one that sought to unravel the balance between light and dark, life and death, order and chaos. Along the way, I encountered others, guardians, wanderers, and seekers, each bearing their own scars and secrets, united by a common cause to defend against the encroaching void. Together, we shared knowledge, stories, and rituals passed down through forgotten generations, forging bonds that transcended time and bloodlines. With every trial, every confrontation with entities born of nightmare and myth, I grew not only in strength, but in understanding. The power I once feared to wield became a tool of protection, and the legacy of my ancestors transformed from a curse into a beacon guiding me toward redemption and healing. Yet, the journey was far from a straightforward battle. It demanded sacrifice, resilience, and the acceptance of hard truths, the intertwining of light and shadow within myself and within the world at large. At the heart of this conflict lay a choice: to succumb to despair and isolation, or to embrace the interconnectedness of all things and the potential for renewal. In the final confrontation, standing at the crossroads where worlds converged, I faced the darkness not as a victim or a solitary warrior, but as a guardian whose strength came from unity and hope. Through ancient rites, the melding of will and spirit, and the courage to confront my deepest fears, the balance was restored, not by eradicating the shadows, but by acknowledging their place in the cycle of existence. As dawn broke once more, this time not just over a single home, but across the horizon of countless realms, I understood that the story was eternal, an unending dance of light and darkness, life and death, where every ending was also a beginning. My journey had reached a turning point, yet the legacy of vigilance and courage would continue in those who followed, each generation bearing the torch against the encroaching night. And so, with a heart tempered by trials and a spirit unbroken, I embraced the path ahead, ready to face whatever shadows might come, knowing that within me, and within all of us, lies the power to illuminate even the darkest corners of existence.